whenever it does start coming, we're going to get a lot of it. We're going to get caught up at some point, and it's probably going to happen fast. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a fantastic day. It is Tuesday, June 17th here in South Georgia, and over the last 2 or 3 weeks we have been getting rain every single day, and not just a little bit of rain, many days a lot of rain. So we went from about a month and a half with no significant rainfall to rain every day for 2 or 3 weeks. And that can make gardening tough. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the impacts that excessive rainfall can have on your garden and what you can do about it. So the first issue we have when we get a lot of rain is a weed explosion. Now, we use drip irrigation on almost everything around here, and with that drip irrigation, we're only watering right where our plants are, right where the row is. We're not watering those spaces between the rows. And that allows us to really control things when we're getting rain just on a normal basis, say once or twice a week. But when you're getting rain every day, it's watering the whole garden plot, it's watering everything, and weeds start popping up everywhere. So not only do we have more weed germination going on, those weeds are growing a lot faster because they're happy because they've got all this soil moisture to work with. So that's a problem in itself. More weeds popping up, weeds growing faster. But the biggest issue as it relates to the weeds, when we're getting a lot of rain, it's really hard to kill them. So let's use this mess right here as an example. This is a spot where I'm trying to grow a second round of cucumbers and summer squash, but you can see we've got quite the weed explosion in here. So I ran over this with the wheel hoe 2 days ago and yesterday. You can tell it's been lightly cultivated, but I didn't kill a whole lot of weeds. I might have killed a few of them, but most of them are still there growing. So our traditional methods of keeping weeds at bay don't work that well when that soil is wet, when it stays wet, when that moisture is getting replenished every day. Now in normal conditions with the wheel hoe, we run through a plot, it flips those weeds over a little bit, the sun is out, it starts baking those weeds, and they're usually dried up and dead in just a few hours. But with the wet soil and the continuous rainfall, they don't die like they should. So what's the solution? Well, I have found that when the soil's just staying moist like that, the weeds aren't dying like they're supposed to die when you flip them over with the wheel hoe. You almost just got to get out there and hand pull all your weeds. That's not an easy solution, but it is an effective solution. Sometimes I also grab my hand hoe and do a little bit more aggressive flipping of the weeds than what the wheel hoe gives. So yesterday I pulled a boatload of weeds from these Louisiana evergreen shallots here. Looks like I missed several in there, but it looks a lot better than it did. Right over here, I took my hand hoe and tried to aggressively flip over those weeds, and we killed some of them, but you can see some of them there are still thriving despite being flipped with that hand hoe. So it makes things really, really tough because it takes a lot longer to pull all those weeds by hand as opposed to just running through a plot with the wheel hoe. And even if you've got a really good plan, say you've got 5 or 6 plots like I do, and you say, okay, today I'm going to get this plot looking good, tomorrow I'm going to focus on the next plot. With it raining every day, you know, once a week, weeding is really not enough. You got to be in these plots multiple times a week just to stay on top of it. And then one final issue relating to weeds that we get when we have a lot of rain. I'm sure a lot of you are dealing with this right now. The grass creeps into your garden plots a lot faster. Normally, keeping the grass mowed around here, and then about once every 2 weeks, just going around the perimeter of each of my square plots with a wheel hoe or a hand hoe, I can keep that grass from creeping in. But once we're getting all this rain, man, it just starts flooding into those plots. It makes it a lot harder to manage. So weeds or unwanted vegetation are a big problem when we're getting a lot of rain at one time. Another issue we have, number 2 on our list, is elevated disease pressure. And this is especially the case on cucurbits, which can quickly get powdery mildew and downy mildew. They'll get it even if it's dry out here due to our humidity, but when we start getting a lot of rain, you'll start to see it even more. So you got to watch out for those mildews when you're getting a lot of rain on your squash, your cucumbers, your pumpkins, your watermelons, things like that. So that elevated disease pressure can be really rough on cucurbits. It can be rough on nightshades as well. Not as much peppers, but tomatoes, you get a lot of leaf moisture at one time, especially with some hot and humid conditions. You can start seeing some issues on your leaves. And there's not a ton you can do about this one besides grow in a big climate controlled greenhouse. But if you know you have this kind of weather on a regular basis where it can be dry for a month or so, and then you're going to get all caught up there in 2 to 3 weeks, not a bad idea to plant disease resistant varieties that can hang on a little better during that abnormal weather. Now, a third issue we can have when we're getting a lot of rain is that we can't really spray our garden effectively. Now, I'm not spraying a whole lot around here. At this point, I'm really just trying to control the hornworm damage on my tomatoes and the pickleworm damage on my squash and cucumbers. So it's not going to do me a whole lot of good to come out here in the afternoon, spray my tomatoes, squash, and cucumbers. Then an hour later, we get a pop-up storm and it washes it all off the leaves. So it's almost impossible to spray when you're getting rain every single day, especially when you don't know when that rain is coming on a given day. Now, fortunately for me, even though I haven't been able to spray for worms in a couple weeks, my tomatoes are still doing okay. We've had a few with some worm damage, but we've been picking them pink, letting them ripen on the counter. Haven't had a ton of worm damage yet. And I'm yet to see the first pickle worm on my cucumbers, but I know they're coming. Just been lucky that we haven't had to deal with them quite yet. So the best thing you can do if you know you're prone to get weeks of rain at a time is to try to get a handle on those worms early before you start getting a ton of rain. I know it doesn't always work out timing wise like that, but for instance, we had a nice little dry spell early on in the growth of these tomatoes and cucumbers. We were able to, keep those worms to a minimum then. And now, even though we haven't been able to spray, they're not that bad. If I would have had a full-blown worm problem going into all this rainy weather, there would have been nothing I could do to stop it. So getting a handle on that worm pressure early will definitely help you out. Number 4 on our list, when we get a lot of rain, we can tend to get some overgrown harvests. That's especially the case with squash and cucumbers. So when you're getting rain every day, you might come out in the afternoon to pick your squash and have a few that maybe a little small. You're going to let them ride one more day, and you come out here the next day and they are overgrown and look like this right here. And there's only so much zucchini bread you can make with these overgrown squash, or so many that you can feed to your chickens before they get tired of them. So over the last few weeks, we have ended up with a lot of overgrown squash, zucchini, and cucumbers. It's just the way it is. Some afternoons, I'll be planning to come out here and harvest, and all of a sudden it will just start flooding, and I can't harvest that day. Next day, they're blown up, overgrown. So the number of quality fruits we've been getting has not been as many as it should be. So what do we have to do when we're getting this much rain? When we come out here and pick squash and cucumbers, we have to pick them clean. Even those tiny ones, we pick everything we see, because we know in just another day or so it might be too big. Rather have a small one than have something that's not worth eating at all. Moving on to number 5 on our list. When you're getting a lot of rain at one time, your soil gets waterlogged, it gets beat down by all that heavy rain, gets compacted. You might start seeing some algae or stuff growing on top of it there, and the soil itself can't breathe. It almost becomes anaerobic, and you'll start seeing your plants suffer as a result. Now, we're fortunate in that our native soil here is pretty sandy, drains pretty well. We've also added a lot of compost to these plots over the years to further enhance that drainage and also keep them from crusting over as bad when we get heavy rains. But even with our soil, if we're getting a lot of rain at one time, I still have to come out here and decrust it from time to time, let that soil breathe. And you don't really have to get deep with your cultivation here. You can take something as simple as like a little 3-tine cultivator and just scratch the surface there. Just break up that little bit of crust. It'll help that soil drain and dry out a little bit, also help it breathe. A lot of times after you do that, you'll see your plants start to pop a little bit because you're getting some oxygen in that soil there. So even if it seems way too wet to cultivate, try to just scratch the surface a little bit, try to get rid of that crust, and your plants will be glad you did. And lastly, number 6 on our list, when we're getting a lot of rain at one time, we can start to see some fruit cracking and splitting, which is obviously not something we want because they're usually not salvageable when that happens. Now, as you saw earlier when I showed you those tomatoes, haven't had a lot of cracking issues with those thus far. Probably has a lot to do with the fact that that plot drains so well. Had a few cracks on the shoulders, but nothing major yet. Now, those of you who have been following the channel closely this year know we had a bit of a watermelon fiasco with our first planting, but our second planting, you can see, is doing very well. But because we planted so late, we don't really have any big watermelons out here right now. We're just starting to get some small ones like you see right there, which is a good thing. It just happened to work out well for us. Because if I would have had ripe watermelons or close to ripe watermelons out there with all this rain we've been getting, I guarantee you I would have had a lot of them burst and ruin on me. So sometimes you just get a little bit lucky. I really wish that first planting would have made it because I was excited to try those varieties. But since it didn't, I think we're going to be in a lot better shape. We're not going to have a bunch of ruined watermelons out there. Going to be later eating our watermelons, but it should dry up. This rain can't keep up this pace for that long, so I'm expecting we start seeing a little dry weather here in the next few weeks, which should be really nice for some good watermelon ripening. So we don't ever want to complain about the rain. We're always thankful when we get rain, but we have to be aware that when we're getting a lot of rain at one time, it's going to cause some extra issues in our vegetable garden. Now, some of those issues have a solution, some of them really don't have a solution, but if you know what to expect, you can try to get in front of any of these issues to minimize the damage. Because it's just basic conservation principles here, folks. If we go a month and a half without any significant rainfall, we know whenever it does start coming, we're going to get a lot of it. We're going to get caught up at some point, and it's probably going to happen fast. So I hope you enjoyed the video today, and if you've been dealing with a lot of rain lately, let me know in the comments below some of the struggles you've been having in your garden. And if you missed that recent video where we talked about some of the tomato varieties that are performing well for us this year, you can catch up, watch that right here. We'll show you the ones that are really, really impressing us so far. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.